El heavy metal atrajo la atención del mundo por primera vez en los 80. Quiet Riot llegó al número 1 y prácticamente todas las bandas con sus carismáticos líderes y una balada pegajosa llegaron a conseguir un gran éxito. Pero no se suponía que el metal fuera lindo y muchos chicos llegaron a resentir la imposición de ese estilo.
For me, it was more about the music than getting laid. I'd rather have a great riff and a great song and feel good about it than just have my...
Y se organizó la resistencia.
Rechazaban el brillo y enfatizaban el mal como Sabbath y hablaban de violencia como Iron Maiden.
Este movimiento era el thrash y 4 bandas rápidamente llegaron al estrellato. De Nueva York, Anthrax.
We enjoyed playing fast. We wanted to go faster. That's simple. Let's go. What can we do?
De California, Slayer.
You can only write and embellish upon things you know about, and I'm a big horror movie fan. Boing, you know, and I gotta kill people.
De Los Ángeles, Megadeth.
It was actually getting it on your guitar. Like it or not, we exposed the United States and the rest of the world, for that matter, to this type of music.
There's only one thrash band around that I know of, and that's Metallica, which they're playing tonight at 7:30, and I suggest that everybody gets down here right now and see the best thrash in the United States of America!
Y los líderes de la revolución, Metallica.
With the exception of 3 godfathers of metal, Sabbath, Priest, Maiden, possibly the next most important band in the last 20 years, as far as metal is concerned, is definitely Metallica. What Metallica did was combine new wave of British heavy metal with punk. You ended up with an American Motorhead to some extent, and the kids were relating to them because they were different.
Every time they came out with a record, it was just miles ahead of where everybody else was. Whatever combination they had, I think, between Lars and James, I mean, those two are, I mean, they're the Mick and Keith of metal.
Lars Ulrich y James Hetfield eran 2 chicos con pasados diferentes que compartían la misma pasión por el metal hardcore y odiaban lo que el glam ofrecía. Juntos organizaron una revolución detrás de las líneas enemigas, Los Ángeles, California.
It was 1982 and Motley Crue had just put out Too Fast for Love. I remember one night out in front of the Troubadour, we're standing there in our Iron Maiden t-shirts, and it was like, after a couple of, you know, cold sort of Schlitz malt liquors or whatever, it was like, you saw like Nicky and Tom, it was like, Motley Crue. I remember like Nikki Sixx started chasing after me, and the one thing I could do, because, you know, 5'6" of me, I could like run faster than he could in his 16-inch platform boots, so it wasn't a contest there.
LA just didn't treat us well. We had this aggressive style, and I recall at the Troubadour, there was a security guy throwing chairs at us, you know, at sound check, going, "Get out of here, you punks." You know, they thought we were punk rock, you know. We'd be up on stage playing, and people were fluffing their hair over at the bar. And that's not what music was for us. We're gonna play louder, we're gonna play faster. We want some attention. So really, all the posers in LA helped develop our style.
This one is gonna kill all the fake people out there, all the posers.
Let me tell you, we go way back with Metallica, Rat. Because at the time, our drummer was rehearsing with Lars. Those guys hated what was happening. But I remember back then, James like, "Dad, we won't play with them. Those guys, Dad." And it was like, "Well, why? Aren't we all one happy big metal family?" No. They're the next breed.
He was like, here we are, there is no bull playing what we feel and playing what's in our hearts, and we don't give a what we look like or smell like or play like.
Metallica tenía la actitud y la ambición, pero en Los Ángeles lo que no tenían era un público. Demasiado punk para el metal y muy metal para el punk. Eran ridiculizados o ignorados. En 1983, cuando el metal pegajoso ya estaba en las listas de popularidad, la banda se mudó a San Francisco. En ese año, Metallica lanzó su disco como un reto para las bandas glam de todos lados. Su título, Kill 'Em All.
We were gonna call the album Metal Up Your Ass, but the damn record companies would not take it. So I want you all to repeat after me. Metal Up Your Ass!
Their first record was as metal as you can get and with more attitude and this and that, and everybody's been influenced by it.
I bought Kill 'Em All by Metallica going through the import section in my vinyl record store, and I picked it up and I turned around, I go, these are the ugliest humans I've ever seen in my life. I have to buy this. I think like James had like a wart on his cheek and Lars, and I go, man, this is definitely not a glam metal band.
Thank God for Metallica. They were the best thing of the 80s, I thought. Brought it back to the spirit of Sabbath. You know what I mean? It's like if we started it, then they reinvented it.
La antorcha había cambiado de manos y durante los 80 Metallica lanzó sus discos clásicos. Aunque no pudieron superar a Motley Crue ni Poison en ese tiempo, lograron credibilidad. En 1988, cuando las bandas de melenudos desaparecían, Metallica fue nominado para el primer premio Grammy de Heavy Metal.
I'm Kurt Loder back with another Grammy report. And one of the biggest names making its TV debut tonight is Metallica.
I mean, it was just mind-boggling. Sitting up there and looking at, Stevie Wonder sitting down there and, Michael Jackson and, it was just like, wow.
El metal estaba por tener un lugar en los Grammys. ¿Y el ganador fue?
Jethro frickin' Tull wins. Jethro Tull has never been a metal band. At that point, I don't even think they were really a band.
It didn't dent the evening at all. It was more like a week later when the storm and the backlash and all that was like, Metallica got robbed. After hearing, 500 people tell you that and reading in every, magazine and newspaper and publication, Metallica got. It's like you're sitting there going, we got.
That sort of cluelessness just continually haunts heavy metal. And there is still, amongst a lot of people in the press, this elitist attitude. Heavy metal has never, ever been given the respect and credit it deserves. And in some ways, it's probably what makes it so near and dear to the people who love it.
Heavy, la historia del metal.
You knew you were going to get a show that was very unpredictable. And if there was something that got under the craw of Axl, he would tell it.
We never know how we're going to end the show. If we're going to do an encore or if I'm going to get pissed off and leave. Because something always happens at the end of a show.
Heavy, la historia del metal. Heavy, la historia del metal.
Have you got anything in common with Iron Maiden?
I hope not.
A mediados de los 80, los thrashers y los melenudos se encontraban en guerra. Los thrashers buscaban conquistar a los fanáticos, los melenudos a las listas de popularidad. Una banda probó que las canciones pueden ser metal y al mismo tiempo patear a algunos traseros.
Guns N' Roses were street, they were tough, they could rap poison around one of their little baby fingers. They were the real deal. They were like the flip side of Sunset Strip. They weren't all glammed up and pretty, and they were kind of rough around the edges.
Well, 1987 was very good for these guys. This is the first video from Guns N' Roses. Here's Welcome to the Jungle.
This wasn't one of those manufactured bands where they get a bunch of guys together because of the way they look. This is guys that hung out together and probably hated each other a lot of the time, but they were going to make the kind of music that made sense to them.
Nacidos de las cenizas de dos bandas, Hollywood Rose y LA Guns, Guns N' Roses, representan a las estrellas del underground. Pero fue la última adición al grupo lo que consolidó el sonido de Guns N' Roses.
We ran an ad for a heavy metal punk glam guitarist, blues influenced. And Slash showed up and we said, nah. But he kept popping up everywhere we were at, and all of a sudden we started working together.
I still remember to this day the first time I heard Guns N' Roses demos given to me in 1986 by their manager, who said to me, see what you think of these. I've agreed to manage them, but I really don't know why, because they're not going anywhere.
En 1987 lanzaron Appetite for Destruction. Vendieron 15 millones de copias del álbum, un récord para cualquier debut. Pero al principio las ventas eran lentas y Guns N' Roses casi eran desconocidos.
I was actually with Guns N' Roses in San Francisco when they supported the Cult, when the album broke into the top 100. Let's put it into perspective. This is Appetite for Destruction. It had just broken into the top 100. And they were overwhelmed. They were so delighted.
Their first album came out in 1987, and nothing happened. It wasn't until they went on tour with Aerosmith in 1988 that Sweet Child of Mine was released, and the whole thing exploded. People in Aerosmith still complain about how their opening act was bigger than they were.
Appetite for Destruction is the best rock record of the 80s. That record was so good that it was very common to hear people say things like, well, I hate metal, but I like this Guns N' Roses record. And it was one of the rare times where that happened, and the people who really did like metal didn't decide they were going to turn on that band for their success.
They came up with this sound that somehow, I mean, even Metallica fans knew this was an edgy sound. Because it was rock that actually rocked really, really, really hard.
Y para hacerlos aún más interesantes estaba el aspecto volátil del grupo, asociados con historias de drogas, peleas y conflictos internos. Eso agudizó la atracción del público. Y GNR garantizaba llenos cada noche.
On stage, you knew you were going to get a show that was very unpredictable, because you didn't know if you were going to get one song or you were going to get 10 songs. And if there was something that got under the craw of Axl, he would tell it.
We never know how we're going to end a show. We never know if we're going to do an encore or if I'm going to get pissed off and leave. Because something always happens at the end of a show for me, for some reason.
But when Axl was on, he was the greatest frontman in the world.
For a lot of people, that was part of the fascination, was that Axl Rose was danger personified.
GNR appealed to all the sections. There was enough glam about them for the girls to love what they were doing. There was enough streetwise attitude and hard riffing for the metal fans to think they're cool. They covered all the bases without realizing it.
En 1991, Guns N' Roses lanzó el largamente esperado álbum doble Use Your Illusion 1 y 2 para enormes hordas de fanáticos y consolidó su estatus como la banda más importante del metal. Pero GNR no eran los únicos que sacudirían al público con música nueva e innovadora.
Guns N' Roses were making their Use Your Illusions sort of like down the street, and when we were making the Black album, it was a lot of fun coming back from the studio with the mixes and check this out, what we were working on the last couple of days, and Slash pulls out, hey, check what we were working on, and you know, it was a lot of fun.
Justo cuando Guns N' Roses cerraba la brecha entre el underground y el público pop metalero, Metallica estaba a punto de hacer lo mismo con el álbum que tomó su sonido hardcore y lo mezcló con algo más pop.
I remember being in Paris with Metallica just as the Black Album was coming out. And I just said, look, you can play speed metal forever, but ultimately someone's going to come over and say, we can play faster. You know, the point of it is not to be the fastest guy in the universe. The point of it is to make the hardest and most enduring music you can.
Everything had become very exaggerated. The Black Album became an answer to, wait a minute, we got to simplify this and bring it back down to something a little more tangible. Black Album became slightly more accessible. At the same time, the whole mainstream rock audience were kind of shifting out in the direction of where we were. All of a sudden, it was like, whoa.
Black Album llegó al primer lugar. Vendió más de 14 millones de copias en el mundo. Junto con Guns N' Roses, Metallica logró que el sonido del metal llegara a la fama mundial. Pero los fanáticos no estaban contentos con el éxito múltiple de Metallica, con las canciones simples y su postproducción.
I hated it. I thought it was a sellout. I thought it sucked. I thought it was this is not a Metallica record. This is blasphemy.
Kids were like smashing them and like, this is not Master of Puppet. You know, like, it's because their love is so intense that the next thing is their hate can be so intense at the same time.
When you're part of a movement and a scene, and you're there when it's in its infancy and it's in the underground, and then all of a sudden your sister who was listening to Duran Duran wants to borrow your Metallica Black Album, you're like, whoa, and you reassess whether what you love so much is still cool.
I'm proud of the fact that we've always had the balls to go where we wanted, when we wanted. There was never a kind of like, now we have to play up to this or these people or whatever. And I think we've always been pretty open about that. And if you want to be part of the ride, come take the ride. But we're not going to start, you know, altering the course for somebody else.
I've heard people say sell out when they talk about Metallica. But then I hang out with Lars, and he's like, yeah, we sold out. We sold out every night. You know? And that's a fact. I've never seen him not play to a sold-out place.
Heavy, la historia del metal.
Public Enemy was my favorite rap group. I always just wanted to work with those guys, but how?
We were abrasive. Anthrax was abrasive. And, you know, we throttled it to the edge.
Heavy, la historia del metal. La historia del metal.
Let's see how many subgenres of heavy metal you can name.
Okay, there's power metal, glam metal,
hair metal,
thrash metal,
ambient thrash,
progressive metal,
stoner metal,
hardcore,
grindcore,
deathcore,
death metal,
melodic death metal,
goth metal,
dark metal,
doom metal,
satanic metal,
funk metal,
rap metal,
symphonic metal,
melodic metal,
laptop metal,
cinematic metal,
new metal,
folk metal,
old metal,
shred guitar metal.
La década de los 90 tuvo un gran aumento de música heavy metal. Con tantos subgéneros existiendo al mismo tiempo, no había nada fuera de los límites de la música. En 1991, los héroes del metal, Anthrax, tomaron la iniciativa y llevaron al metal a territorio nuevo.
Public Enemy was my favorite rap group. They didn't sound like anybody else at that time in rap music. I started wearing a Public Enemy t-shirt live all the time. I was like, yeah, man, you know, people have to know about this.
We were sharing the same management company. And I saw Scotty in with a Public Enemy shirt. I was like, this is real cool. He just is wearing one of our shirts, and we're a brand new group. So when I made Bring the Noise, I included Anthrax.
Business for Eric B and Alel as well. Hell, license for Anthrax. Still the
It was like, whoa, you know, Chuck named us in Bring the Noise, and that built a relationship.
I always just wanted to work with those guys. And we had already done I'm the Man, the rap song that Anthrax wrote. Okay, now we can work with Public Enemy, but how? It was in 90, we were recording Persistence of Time. I said, hey, I've got this arrangement idea in my head to cover Bring the Noise. I called Chuck and I told him what we did, and his initial reaction was kind of,
My thing was like, I felt a little strange actually doing my song over again.
But we sent him the tape, and about 2 days later I heard back from him and he said, this is slamming, when can we come in?
We were definitely extreme examples, and that's what made our marriage fit. We were abrasive, Anthrax was abrasive, and you know, we took it to the edge, throttled it to the edge.
It was straight from your heart, it was straight in your face, and that's where we were at. There wasn't a better time for us, because we knew we were breaking barriers.
Hear the drummer get wicked!
Anthrax were the first to try rap metal, got slated for it. Everybody else was doing it 3 or 4 years later, and people were raving about it. Poor old Anthrax, first in there, people laughed at them.
People just didn't get it. It was so before its time, that track. Our own labels didn't want to have anything to do with us. They didn't understand. Fine, go yourself. We'll put it out on our own. Of course, they put it out, you know, because someone said, you know what, this is probably going to sell a few copies. We're going to make money on it.
It took off. It totally took off. That whole Public Enemy Anthrax thing was amazing.
I think it was a healthy influx of new influences. You know, rap has the anger in it, and it was a nice meld. I think it was great.
I do believe it is the moment that opened the door for that genre.
Ese género que combinaba metal hardcore con ritmos electrónicos y hip hop obtuvo el nombre de nuevo metal gracias a la innovación de Public Enemy y Anthrax. Bandas como Korn, Limp Bizkit y Linkin Park mostraron un nuevo sonido y una nueva imagen y acercaron a la generación X al metal.
The early 90s was a strong time for rock. You know, it jump-started young guys like me. I was so inspired by everything that was going on.
New metal was starting to happen. The underground could relate to it because it was very much away from the mainstream.
Everything about it was different. We stood still and headbanged. You know, they jumped up and down and pogoed and did that whole thing.
The tattoos have replaced long hair, detuned guitars have replaced guitar solos, and Cookie Monster vocals have replaced melody and harmony.
I remember Limp Bizkit opening up for us one time, and I just went, this is going to be the next big thing, man. This is going to blow up. I don't know what it is, but somebody likes it, because I just saw what it did to the crowd out there. There were certain types of way I would express myself that maybe people would interpret as hip-hop, but I felt completely metal.
Let me see them hands, pick them up in the air.
These are the guys that grew up listening to the thrash and speed metal stuff. And our records are what influenced them to play guitar, just like the Kiss records influenced me to pick up the instrument. So, again, it's sort of this figuratively handing the baton off to the younger audience.
Lejos de las influencias del metal de la vieja escuela, la nueva popularidad del nuevo metal ocasionó que algunas clásicas resurgieran.
All the older bands who had been decried suddenly found themselves back in fashion, back in vogue. They were picking up young audiences. Suddenly kids starting bands found it acceptable to say, well, we love Judas Priest, we love Iron Maiden. Sabbath, who had been a sad old hat for so long, suddenly got back with Ozzy, and everyone said, wow, Sabbath are back, this is great.
Black Sabbath has some great musicianship, yet they were not considered legit. And I remember calling up people I went to high school with and saying, see, Sabbath, baby, they're influencing everybody. You know, I mean, like, you know, finally, they were being acknowledged for the contributions they gave.
Los 90 fueron años buenos para Ozzy Osbourne. Además de reunirse con Sabbath, logró uno de sus mayores éxitos. En 1996, él y su esposa fundaron el Ozzfest, el festival clásico de las bandas de metal, donde han iniciado sus carreras bandas como Korn, Limp Bizkit, Slipknot y System of a Down.
I believe the importance of Ozzfest cannot be underestimated. One, it put Ozzy back on the map and made him the most important figure of metal. Two, it gave huge numbers of young bands the opportunity to go on tour and play to big audiences.
You had so many different types of groups kind of coming together, so it was like the traveling circus in a way.
It's the biggest tour every summer. Ozzfest is bringing metal to the masses and making metal cool once again for all ages.
I want to see a real heavy metal crowd go crazy!
Heavy, la historia del metal.
I've always asserted myself as a villain because the villain in any walk of life is the person who refuses to follow blindly.
La historia del metal. La historia del metal.
Metal is such an extreme statement of art that there will always be people trying to come up with new ways to push it into these bizarre territories that you've never seen.
Cuando se creó el Ozzfest en 1996, comenzó un escenario donde todas las bandas de metal podían tocar. Sin embargo, hubo un participante que no pertenecía a ningún género específico. Era uno de los músicos más controvertidos de los 90. El antiguo periodista Brian Warner, también conocido como el obsceno, agresivo y profano Marilyn Manson.
I consider myself an artist more than a musician, and I think the music and how people are affected by it and my performance, all of that together adds up to what Marilyn Manson is.
I remember seeing him on Ozzfest. He did the podium, dressed up like a Nazi. I said, that is the because he's just taking every taboo and just going, you.
First time I saw him perform, I was practically had a tear in my eye. I'm going, he gets it. This is what it's about. Being bigger than life and coming off like a rock star.
It really reminded me of being a 10-year-old kid looking at the cover of Kiss Destroyer and wondering, are these guys really demons? Are they really monsters? And here I was, 20 years later, seeing Marilyn Manson and saying to myself, is this guy really the devil? I mean, what is it?
Manson seguía la filosofía de bandas como Alice Cooper y Kiss. El shock vende. En 1996 aparece Antichrist Superstar. Lo convirtió en la voz de la juventud rechazada, pero para la sociedad era lo que el mismo presidente Clinton decía, el mal.
Marilyn Manson is spiritually blind.
I've always asserted myself as a villain because villains are always the more interesting characters in any story that I grew up reading. And because the villain in any walk of life is the person who refuses to follow blindly and always wants to question things. And for me, art is supposed to be a question.
In the mainstream media, everybody was going, whoa, yes, he's the shock rock king. Oh, I'm so shocked by this terribly shocking music that this man is attempting to foist on me. And people weren't listening.
Wrong in the 90s. It was up to him to say, we have a budget surplus and the world is great and everybody's making millions of dollars off the internet, but not if you're 16. Then you hate that everybody's so happy. You can't understand anything and you just want to take a shotgun and go shoot people in your school.
14 students were shot today when two young men entered a school dressed
Colorado, the Sheriff's Department will release its final
minute-by-minute account of what happened in Columbine.
of the 13 shooting victims and their two assailants were...
El 20 de abril de 1999, el país se sacudió por la masacre en una escuela de Columbine, Colorado. Después de matar a 13 personas, los asesinos se suicidaron.
I was in Chicago, and I was watching the news, CNN at the time, and I joked at first thinking I would get blamed for it, and then who knew that it would be so ridiculous, because the initial reports, they said that these kids were wearing makeup and they were dressed like me.
Since the Colorado tragedy, there has been an outpouring of criticism against rock musician Marilyn Manson.
Manson is the ideal scapegoat for Columbine. He kind of walks into it by having songs with titles like Get Your Gun and advocating extreme behavior.
I don't want to be misquoted as saying this is the cause of what happened in Littleton, but it's a piece of the picture, and this is something that each one of us can do something about.
Marilyn Manson has canceled the last 5 dates of his U.S. tour out of respect for those lost in Littleton.
The irony is, the kids concerned weren't Marilyn Manson fans. The association between Manson and the massacre is somewhat mysterious, to be honest. But these big photographs of Marilyn Manson would appear by stories about Columbine with no obvious connection between the two.
The saddest and most disgusting part of the whole event was the media coverage. The people right in there from the very beginning documenting the grief and filming the funerals. And they turn around and then they start indicting entertainment, but they don't realize the most gruesome entertainment that I've seen was their coverage.
Marilyn Manson dealt with the Columbine tragedy very well. When someone asked him, what would you have said to those kids if you had the chance? He said, I wouldn't have said anything. I'd have listened. And that's what nobody did with them. Nobody listened to them.
Comenzando con el lanzamiento del primer disco de Black Sabbath en 1970, el heavy metal siempre ha sido señalado como malvado, satánico y como la fuente de muchos males del mundo. Marilyn Manson fue la figura perseguida entonces.
Metal gets the bad rap with the media because it's easy. They want something flashy and splashy. You know, if it bleeds, it leads. And having a Marilyn Manson album to pull out and wave around, you know, with Marilyn on a cross, Antichrist Superstar, whatever, that works.
In a way, that's the ultimate acknowledgement of his success, that he could be this Jesus of opposition, or this Satan, you know, which amounts to the same thing. It's like, how much bigger can you be than Jesus or Satan? And he was kind of both.
This kind of thing happens every 5 or 10 years. Some politician's going to come out of the woodwork trying to make a name for himself, because what better way to get attention than to go after an attention getter?
Heavy, la historia del metal.
The older fans, they want to see it one more time, and the young fans who heard about it, they want to see what it was like, or what they heard about it was like.
People are going to come no matter what, no matter how old they are, no matter how many kids they got at home now. If it's a metal band that they grew up loving, that's still doing what they love and remember, they're going to be there.
Heavy, la historia del metal. Heavy, la historia del metal.
It's an honor, really. You know, we've been put in to receive it 7 times. And at the end of the day, I thought they're never going to do it. They're never going to nominate us for an award. And lo and behold, you know, after 35 years or 4 years of being on the game, we got one. So it's, you know, it's an achievement. I'm really proud about it.
Han pasado casi 3 décadas desde que la banda de Birmingham, Inglaterra, entró al heavy metal. En el 2006, la entrada de Black Sabbath al Salón de la Fama del Rock and Roll fue un merecido tributo para un género que deseaba ser respetado. Uno podía predecir la influencia del metal en la cultura pop de hoy.
Metal's very mainstream. You have the California gubernatorial elect Arnold Schwarzenegger using Twisted Sister music as his campaign theme. How ironic. So, how times have changed.
El heavy metal es una historia de sobrevivencia para la nueva generación que sostiene la antorcha y para el antiguo Dios que se niega a retirarse.
Ave Maria, Ave Maria, Ave Maria, Ave Maria, Ave Maria.
About 2 hours and 20 minutes of showtime. 2 hours is when I start prep. Ave Maria. Process is fairly involved. Step one, I'll break out the hair. People want to see, this stuff. They want to see the big hair. Step two, do the nails. God, this nail polish is really clumpy. Step three, some exercising, some push-ups so you look pumped when you go out there on stage. Because no one likes to see a 50-year-old with a face full of makeup who isn't pumped. I love you truly.
There's an immediacy and a fun part of bands like AC/DC and us and Kiss and Alice Cooper and Judas Priest. I mean, there's a lot of fun times associated with it.
We're not here playing stuff off a new record. We play the old stuff, dress up like the old days, and we give them an old school show, because that's what they want. The older fans, they want to see it one more time, and the young fans who heard about it, they want to see what it was like or what they heard about it was like.
It's like this dinosaur in a good way that does not change. It's exactly the same, and that's why everyone likes it.
I think that heavy metal music has the most passionate and loyal fan base of any kind of music.
I went to see Judas Priest last month, and the first time I saw Judas Priest, I think, was 1980, so 25 years later, and they were awesome.
You know what? People are going to come no matter what, no matter how old they are, no matter how many kids they got at home now, no matter what time they got to start work the next day. If it's a metal band that they grew up loving, that's still doing what they love and remember, they're going to be there, and they're going to let it all hang.
Fantastic. One night you can Twisted Sister, the next night you can see Motley, then Dio doing Holy Diver, Iron Maiden. And I think we're living in an era that has never been so exciting and vibrant as it is now, because for the first time ever, the whole history and heritage of metal is open to everybody.
Metal, out of all the genres, will always survive because it is the will of the people.
You sang along to this music, you threw your fist in the air to this music, you sweated to this music, and you felt some sort of relief from your frustrations.
Still be fighting against society. It should still be, rattling cages. It should still be an irritant. It should still be pissing people off. And so you kick back, you punch back, you fight back, you claw back, you scream back with heavy metal.
Heavy, la historia del metal.